And now let's recap what happened last week on the tour, because we did have the men's edition of the Queen's Club tournament just taking place, the HSBC Championships round two, and Carlos Alcaraz came out on top, reclaiming his title from 2023 with a win in the final over Yuri Lehechka. Three-set win, 6-2 in the third. It took Alcaraz to get that win, but he is back with a bang on the grass courts of London, showing his ability to come through in those final sets, and when the match is going the distance, as we've seen very much so in recent times as well, to get the win and the title. Joel, you were at Queen's at points during the last week, watching a bit of Alcaraz. What did you make of his week on the grass?
I mean, he's just so good, isn't he? The idea of him going straight from Roland Garros, the clay to the grass, very quick turnaround via Ibiza, and being able to put on the performances he did across the week at Queen's was just so impressive. I mean, he had to really dig deep at times across the week. He had a very long match with Jaume Munar in the second round, 3 hours plus, and then again in the final as well. And it just shows, I think, just how much of an all-round player he is. That I think really emphasizes his just natural talent for tennis. It doesn't feel like he's got one surface that he is like stronger on than other surfaces. It just feels like he is just an all-round spectacular player, and it does make me think him like Carlos Alcaraz grass courts. I know we don't typically associate Spanish prowess on the green stuff, but certainly I think Carlos Alcaraz could maybe go down as one of the best Spaniards ever to play on grass, given the form he shows on it.
I mean, I'd argue not just Spaniards, but the best player ever on grass. It's early
Mm.
days, but at age 22, he actually, well, amongst number one players, ATP number ones that have been on the tour, he has the best career winning percentage on grass at the moment, at 90%. And that,
Wow.
Roger Federer was at, I think, 86.9%. And then you've got the likes of McEnroe, Djokovic, Sampras, etc. So already such a young age, obviously a long way to go in his career, early days, but that says it all. I think he's already got two Wimbledon titles, two Queen's titles. I think that says it, for itself. And
It
he's almost carving out a bit of a niche. Is he the natural kind of king of grass as it stands at the moment?
I would just, in the defense of Roger Federer, I think he maybe played about 200 more matches to get that average.
Well,
So I would just say we're not going to hand that title over just yet. But
early days, yes.
something that I did also just want to mention that I thought I've done some research, Kim, in terms of how Rafa can be involved in this episode, because we like to get a mention of
We do.
Jaume Munar and Rafa in every episode now, it would
Mallorca
seem.
represent.
We are a Mallorcan podcast here. And we do travel there quite often. But what was more impressive about when Nadal did the back-to-back was actually that they were consecutive weeks. So Carlos actually was able to hop over to Ibiza, kind of reset, and then head over to the Queen's Club, whereas Rafa had to pretty much get the train, head straight over, and head straight to Queen's in 2008. And then he went on to win the Olympics that year as well as Wimbledon. So that's kind of crazy that how much and how quickly they used to have to do in the turnaround. So I think that now having that week and not necessarily playing that first week really probably helped Carlos to reset and get himself back into this, because he looked so comfortable competing again, and it felt like even though there were some tough moments, he was still able to draw on some of the experiences he's had recently, the tough matches that he's won. But I was going to say, this scoreline against Lehechka in the final, I think he got 3 games against Yannick Sinner at the French Open. So where has this come from, Lehechka? Is it the grass that's helped him? That the serve is working a bit better, but he was made to look quite ordinary just a couple of weeks ago by the world number one, and now almost taking the title against Carlos
Yeah.
Alcaraz.
I think by Alcaraz in the final, he got his movement got found out a little bit. I think he's such an explosive player when he has time to be set and unleash from the back of the court. But I think with Alcaraz, something that I think I'm really impressed by is his movement. He still is able to generate incredible power, but he feels a bit more like light-footed. I think when he kind of moves about the court, and when he's got like the drop shot as well in his arsenal, I think again it's something that Lehechka found, harder to kind of to combat. And we saw that incredible lob from Alcaraz at one point when Lehechka was at the net. But I felt like Alcaraz was able to get Lehechka in those kind of difficult situations because of his movement. And Lehechka, not necessarily known as the smoothest glider, I think, across the court.
He looked pretty good against Jack Draper. I was just going to make a quick note on that one because we do get in trouble sometimes for maybe focusing too much on some of the controversial activities on the WTA tour. But I did see Jack Draper break the signage, and pretty intentionally. And I think Jack has a very good reputation, but he is kind of getting a little bit of a hothead reputation. You spoke to him this week, and we've spoken to him many times before. But from watching his matches, do you think he does sometimes get a bit angrier now that the stakes are a bit high, the expectations are higher for himself?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, I think he was quite chilled across the week. So I was actually a little bit surprised when that happened. And I could definitely see that being a more of a heat of the moment situation. It was tight, it was tense, it was a hot day. And I think a combination of things got to him. I think from the Draper point of view, I think he'll be happy with the fact that he was not playing great tennis, I think, generally speaking, at Queen's. I think we've seen him play better tennis, but he was finding ways to win. He did that against Popperin when it went really tight in the third set. He did that against Nakashima. But against Lehechka, again, in a similar kind of position, perhaps he was just a little bit frustrated that he wasn't really bringing his best tennis at those kind of key moments. And he's going to need to raise his level a bit more, I think, when it goes to Wimbledon. But as I say, I will say the fact that he still got to a semi-final of a 500, not playing his best tennis, I still think it's a good position to be in.
Yeah, because he did struggle past Popperin, Nakashima. He had some.
It was so
ones.
tense in that Popperin third set. I actually thought it was. I didn't actually realize. I thought it was going to a championship tiebreak. I thought it was going to 10, not 7.
You thought it was all over, Joel, didn't you?
Yeah, I was like, what's going on?
I mean, he gave great value for money for the fans, and I think Roberto Bautista Agut as well brought good value for money, some long battles that he came through, and he did really well to reach semi-finals. And he is a former Wimbledon semi-finalist from I think 2019, so it was nice to see him have some good results.
Another Spanish grass court expert.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think Lehechka one to watch for Wimbledon for sure. And Draper, with his results here, he has actually clinched that 4th seed at Wimbledon. Do you think that's going to make a significant difference to his campaign there?
Well, I asked him about this in press at Queen's, and I was like, was that a motivating factor going into Queen's and trying to lock that down so, he's not facing the likes of Sinner and Alcaraz and Zverev, to be fair, at Wimbledon before the semi-finals. But to be honest, he sort of just batted it away and said, if I focus on my performances, everything else will kind of take care of itself, including my ranking and my seeding. So he sort of underplayed it a little bit, but I certainly think it's still a very nice position to
be have, isn't it?
Yeah.
It definitely helps when you don't have to play them in the quarterfinal if you do get the latter stages. But a lot of the players, I think, they try not to get ahead of themselves in the draws and not think too much about that because, there's a lot of tough players you could end up playing in round one. I think especially too on the women's side, there are so many unseeded players that could do an awful lot of damage. And I mean, Bublik almost would have been unseeded had he not won the title. So that just shows that you could play some really tough opposition in round one. So being 4th seed, you might not get the opportunity anyway to play against some of the really high seeds unless you beat the players lower ranked than that.
Precisely. And we'll get on to Bublik in just a second. I wanted to ask you both, and Joel, especially as you've been present at Queen's for the last 2 weeks, what did you make of this kind of new setup, having the back-to-back WTA and ATP events? How did the courts hold up, having to cope with the 2 weeks instead of just the one?
I mean, I don't think they could have asked for better weather across the 2 weeks. I mean, it was scorchio at times. I was reaching for the factor 40.
Not factor 50 or 70.
Yeah, sorry.
They make factor 40.
Factor 40?
He's invented
50.
it. He's mixed 10 and 30, Kim.
But yeah, it was hot at points, and you could see that in terms of the court. And I think, I think it was good for the men's in the sense that, had a week that was, worn in and there wasn't as much moisture. but it almost kind of looked like the grass court kind of played like a hard court a little bit. And it was quite dry. But I think overall as an event, it was fantastic, to have both events there. The stands were packed, early on in the weeks. For a 500, it was just kind of great to see a really good showcase as well of British tennis as well. I still remember the days kind of growing up, and we were almost kind of grateful to get one win under our belt. But it's just so exciting now, I think, across both the singles and the doubles, that there's always you're sort of more confident, I think, from a British fan point of view, that there's always going to be interest kind of across to the latter stages. The wheelchair tennis as well was put on court 1, which I think was a really nice touch. So yeah, from Laura Robson and Jamie Murray's perspective as the tournament organizers, I think they've done a cracking job.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. Well, I look forward to it happening in 2026 as well. And let's hope the weather is just as fine next year as well. But we're going to move on to Halle, where Bublik did take the title, as Chris mentioned. And again, another player to repeat his victory from 2 years prior, where he also lifted this title. This year, beating Daniil Medvedev in the final in straight sets, 6-3, 7-6. Now, we saw, Bublik in great form at the French Open, beating Jack Draper and ultimately falling to Yannick Sinner. And it's fantastic for him that he's continued on his good form, picking up the title here. Obviously, like you said as well, he's just going to be in the seedings for Wimbledon as well, which I think many people might breathe a slight sigh of relief for. But yeah, what did you make of his week out in Germany?
I loved it. I think it's so great to see that, having almost reactivated his passion for the sport and almost allowed himself to be passionate and enjoy it again after that run at the French Open. I think the nature of his loss to Yannick Sinner makes you think that maybe that might dampen his spirit slightly, but it hadn't. And I think it's the perfect time to get such a breakthrough result for him, coming onto a surface where he's had so much success previously. I mean, he is built for grass court tennis, and he's also very much built for kind of inventing new ways to do things on the court. His highlights reels this week have just been exceptional. And I think it's the perfect match, really. So I'm very pleased that he did get the win. I also think the seeding does matter significantly for him because, he could do a lot of damage. He really is a dangerous player to face. The only thing that I think probably maybe was a bit unfortunate is that, Medvedev is still struggling to get a title. And I don't like a Medvedev who isn't getting the results, because I feel like we've had that for a while now, and I'd like him to start pushing on again. But take nothing away from Bublik, because he beat really high quality opponents all week.
I mean, Medvedev hasn't won a title for 43 tournaments. So it's a long time coming. And
his head-to-head against Bublik as well.
He'd never lost to him.
He'd never lost to him. I think he was like 6 or 7-0 against Bublik. So it felt like a great opportunity for him, particularly in that tiebreak in the second set. I think he was 4-1 up, and he didn't seize the initiative. And I think it's a common theme at the moment with Medvedev that perhaps in finals, in these big moments, he's actually forgotten how to win. He's forgotten how to win a set. He's forgotten how to win a match, and it feels like he maybe plays a bit too passive in those moments. And that, I think, is when Bublik is at his most dangerous. And again, another thing I just think with Medvedev, I wonder about his court position on a grass court. I mean, he was standing so far behind the baseline. It was like he thought he was playing on a clay court against Alexander Bublik. And it I felt played into Bublik's hands of kind of being the aggressor, standing up on the baseline and being able to just hit and blast Medvedev, off the court with winners at times.
You might as well have been in the audience, Medvedev. But I mean, serious question here. Do you think he needs to take a holiday to Las Vegas? Because Bublik was having a terrible early sort of 2025. He said to his coach that he wanted to quit tennis. This is what he told TNT in an interview. He went off to Vegas for a little holiday and then, comes back refreshed, and Bob's your uncle. Here he is picking up a title again, up into the top 30. So maybe Medvedev needs some time away, perhaps. I don't know.
Well, he does do better on the American hardcourt swing, and Las Vegas is just a stone's throw away. So maybe that would be the right answer for him. But I did also think that quote from Bublik about the fact he said, I want to quit tennis because I can't be 80 in the world. It feels disgraceful. I hated it. I'm like, a lot of players would be quite happy to get to 80 in the world. So I just think, yeah, if you are
he's got high standards.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Probably that.
What do you think has changed for Bublik? Is it like he's changed aspects of his game, or is it like his game is still the same? It's just he's just maybe executing it that bit better. What do you think it is that is sort of leading to this purple patch for him?
He talked about the physical side, improving that. I think he realized that he couldn't necessarily just rely on his talent alone. I'm not saying he's getting older, but he's not necessarily a spring chicken anymore. I think he's like 27. So I think then you do have to put more work in the gym because it doesn't come as naturally to you, the physical side of the game. So he has improved that area because he did want to do what it takes to get himself back to the top. I also do think it's the mentality shift. I think previously he always treated it as a job that he happened to be good at and he could make money from. And I think there is that shift to playing for the love of the game and enjoying it and enjoying everything that comes with it, as well as the financial success and the joys of being good at what you do for work. So I think it's probably twofold in that respect. And also, it's a confidence game. You start to get results, you start to feel better on the court, you start to feel more confident in those moments. And then if you are physically stronger, then you can also rely on that in a way that Jack's talked about a lot. Also, this is not about Bublik, but Jack said before that he did like all the work in the gym. His body was like a Ferrari, but like it broke down quite a lot. And then now, I don't know what it's like now, but I feel like the same things happened to Bublik. And Bublik did say in Roland Garros about the fact that like Jack looks like, almost like a UFC fighter. So I think he is definitely paying attention to the physical side of things and like seeing the results come for those who put in the work.
I wish I was 27 again, I have to say.
And ranked 80 in the world.
Yeah. I mean, I think also it might be a bit of a mindset shift, like, what have I got left? I'm just going to go for it. I've got nothing to lose, which can often like free you up and liberate you. What I wanted to ask though as well from this week is that Jannik Sinner was in the draw as the number one seed, lost to Bublik in the second round. So, Bublik, obviously fantastic win over the world number one for him. We do have some doubts over Sinner on the grass court. He lost to Medvedev at Wimbledon last year. Where are you kind of putting Sinner going into Wimbledon based on what you saw from him in Halle?
Oh, it's hard to know because although he lost early, he lost to the champion, and we know how good Alexander Bublik is playing at the moment. But for me, certainly, Jannik Sinner is not the world number one on a grass court. I wouldn't actually put him in the top five. I don't know where you guys stand on that, but I feel like still there are kind of questions on, the fact that he's got kind of a very good plan A game from the back of the court that is very well suited, I think, to hard court tennis, but is he able to adapt it to grass courts? And I don't necessarily think he's achieved that yet. I still think he'll be a threat at Wimbledon, but I certainly actually wouldn't put him in as one of the favourites.
Well, he did win the tournament he lost in this week, Halle, last year on grass. So he definitely can win titles on grass. My question on this one would be, if it went to 5 sets, I probably would have backed Jannik Sinner to win against Bublik if it was at Wimbledon. I think in those big moments, he is a big match player, and I think it doesn't matter too much what the court is. I think we've seen players who aren't that comfortable on the surface, like Maria Sharapova, for example, become almost a clay court specialist in some ways, winning 2 titles. I think if you have the mentality of being a champion, I think that does translate well. But it is not promising that he has lost for the first time before the quarterfinals, I believe since he lost to Ben Shelton in Shanghai in 2023. So that's a long time since he hasn't won through to the quarterfinals of a tournament. So I guess if you're looking at the evidence, despite the fact he's playing against some really tough opposition there, he did beat Bublik recently. So it doesn't say that he's bounced back that brilliantly from that French Open loss. So I do think that Sinner is always going to be up there in the top 2 in the world on any surface for me. But I do think that if you're looking at this... Yeah, I do. I mean,
based on current, records.
Who else is in there? Who's at number 2 then? Come on, he's going to say Jack Draper, is he?
Djokovic.
I think Zverev is a better grass court player than Jannik Sinner.
Zverev's never done anything at Wimbledon.
Taylor Fritz? I don't know.
You can have Taylor. I'll give you Taylor Fritz, but
Novak Djokovic.
I mean, definitely,
Sure,
I'll give you Djokovic.
yeah.
I'd say top
Eight-time.
3, definitely. Then can we agree on that one? No.
Yes. No, there is Discord at Tennis Weekly HQ.